Welcome to the Decide to Move podcast, helping entrepreneurs like you make smart, pivotal shifts in your life and business. Tune in each episode for inspiring stories from brilliant business minds and trailblazers to find out how they made their big moves and how you can too. Now here's your host, author, speaker, business strategist, CEO, and founder of Decide to Move, Monica M. Bijou.
I'm super excited to have you here with me for another super exciting episode. I have another amazing speaker with me, and she is a graphic designer, brand specialist, and she has a company that's named after her and her husband, who she co-owns with. It's called Mothershed Design Company. Today, I have Meg Mothershed with me, and I'm super excited because she is teaching you how to just pivot, why rebranding your business can be the jumpstart for what you need, especially for those that are making pivotal shifts that you may start off one way with your company, but then you decide that it's just not resonating with you. So rebranding is super important, and she's here to teach us all about that. Hi, Meg. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Most definitely. And if you can share with our audience exactly who you are and where are you coming in from?
Sure. So my name is Meg Mothershed, and I have a branding and web design studio with my husband, Josiah. And so we are based out of sunny Denver, Colorado, right in the heart of the city. So we're hanging in there. So we focus on branding and web design for small service-based businesses.
Nice. So how did you get into designing?
Yeah, well, I actually, when I went to college, I was a fine arts illustration major. Didn't believe in working with computers. I was like, that's not for me. I don't know, that's not real art. I don't want anything to do with that. And then it wasn't actually until I ended up moving to Denver and had to switch my major that I kind of realized that I was going to graduate knowing how to draw really, really well. And that's about it. And, the other thing too, is I realized that design versus traditional fine art was that design just gave me so much more of a challenge. And that's what I really liked, was the problem solving aspect of design. So I ended up getting a degree in graphic design from a college here in Denver. And then I moved on to working as an in-house designer for a nonprofit. My first real job right out of school, and definitely a great experience. And then, kind of long story short, my husband Josiah had started a business, quit his job, started a business right after we got married, like literally like 2 months after we got married, which was planned, but it was still, big change. But then, after a while, it was time for me to move on from that position. And I saw how much fun Josiah was having in the business on his own. So I decided to take the plunge and quit my full-time job and join him as well. So it's been almost 2 years now since I quit my job and joined the business.
Nice. And I would definitely want to delve more into the fact of husband and wife working together. But the question before that, is he also a graphic designer as well?
Yes. So we are both graphic designers, and basically my role is more on the operations side of the business. So a lot of project management, communicating with clients, sales and marketing, that sort of thing. And he is our primary designer, so he does the heavy lifting on the creative side of things. But it really is a benefit that the fact that we are both designers, because we can come look over each other's shoulders and be like, all right, you know what, I would do this, or I would change this, and have that perspective. So yes, he is the designer as well.
Oh, that's great. Have you guys ever worked on a design together?
Oh yes, pretty much everything for the most part gets passed back and forth at some point, whether we're both actively working on a file or we're just, like I said, like peering over each other's shoulders, seeing what we're doing. So yes, it's kind of funny, before we got married, or even when I was still in school, people would ask us, well, you're both designers. Are you you should work together. And we would be like, oh no, no, not right now, and then here we are, a handful of years later, and that's exactly what we're doing. But it was definitely a transition for sure to work with your spouse, but honestly, I think it's only made our relationship stronger and our business much stronger as well. Definitely an asset.
And that's great to hear that, because I know there's some listeners and even viewers who are catching this by video that are considering going into business with their spouse or significant other, or they already are. And are some challenges that I've understand that people have. What have been the pros and the cons of working with your spouse?
Yeah, well, it's funny when the first time I tell someone, oh, my husband and I have a business and, go off on that. But the first thing people usually ask is, well, do you hate each other? Do you fight all the time? Of course, I respond, no, we actually like each other, and that's why we do this. And, I think that's definitely one of the biggest things is that, if you don't get along or communicate very well, just in your relationship in general, having a business together is definitely going to test that even more. I definitely think one of the most important things is communication just in general. And that's true of anyone you be in business with, whether it's your spouse or just a regular business partner. But, I think in terms of pros and cons, I think pros are definitely that. I think the biggest one is that you're both working for your own mutual benefit or for your own future together. So you really feel like you're building something, and you are, and so it's really, I think it's a really fulfilling and satisfying thing to be in business with your spouse. And it's like when you get that job you really wanted, or the client loves it, then it's like you can both really celebrate that. And it's also on the flip side of that too. And if something's not going as well, or you're having a problem, it's nice to like be actually in the same boat. So I would say that's a pro. I think a con of that too is that sometimes it can be challenging when it's like you're both up, but when you're both down, we're both down. It's like, okay, we still got to figure out how to be there for the other person and pick the other person up when we are dealing with something difficult. So I think that's kind of the main con, I would say, is that, we don't do separate jobs. We're doing the same kind of thing. And so making sure that you're able to support the person when it is difficult.
Yeah, thank you for that. Those are some really good tips to talk about, because right now, with everything happening with the world going through a new normal, there's several people who were afraid to start a business, and then are those that said, you know what, there's no other time to start a business than now. And so they may have a spouse that's already entrepreneur that's out there, and then they may decide, hey, maybe we should start working together. And so it's good for them to understand there are there are successful couples out there, and there's companies that are husband and wife or significant other, and they can be successful in how they do it. They just have to have strong communication and being able to be willing to talk about it. I think also the biggest thing is being able to have that conversation about finances. Unfortunately, I see so many people don't even talk about it, even if they're not running a business together, let alone in a relationship. And so definitely have that conversation about money. That's super huge and important.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, owning a business has just by default has forced us to learn so much more about finances, about taxes, about accounting. Like I have taken accounting classes, I do our books, stuff that I never would have thought before all this I would need to necessarily know how to do. But it's been such a valuable learning experience. And honestly, like just having a business like makes you so much more responsible with your personal finances too. I think there's some statistic out there or some study they've done that has proven that people who have a business, and especially have a business with your spouse, you end up being more financially successful in the long run because you're in it together and you treat your personal finances like a business, which I thought was really interesting. And I definitely find to be really true for us as well. But yeah, I mean, money mindset is such a huge thing just in general. And, I really grew up thinking or being taught that money was a tool, and that was kind of in a good, healthy way. Like money is a tool to help you get the things that you need and want. Where I think my husband grew up in a situation where money wasn't talked about nearly as much, or it's kind of like that was rude to talk about it. And so whenever we would have to talk about finances, he would get really uptight and not want to. He's like, it just stresses me out to talk about it. You could just like see him get stressed. And particularly through being married, but also especially through having a business and just having to talk about finances. I'm like, this is how much we need to make a month. This is how many sales we need to get this year. That sort of thing has just really helped both of our mindsets tremendously, and us working together on it. Has given us a really great money mindset. We've learned so much.
Yeah. And, you talk right definitely into my wheelhouse, because I definitely teach about, mindset, especially my millionaire. Like I actually have a download called Millionaire Mindset Secrets. And it's really not just about making money, but it's kind of like, what's your thought and your mindset behind it before you can actually say, I want that first dollar. And you have dreams and ambitions to be a millionaire. And he's got ambitions of thinking I'm only going to be able to make, no more than 5 or 6 figures. It's kind of like, it's totally off kilter. And it's like, what goal are we working towards here? kind of thing. So that's beautiful. And we've actually had an opportunity to talk. So I absolutely admire the fact that you and your husband are doing this together. And eventually I will have both of you on the show together, which I'm super excited to have that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Yeah. So let's go ahead.
Oh, nope, you go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, so we can get into your topic and actually talk about, why branding and rebranding is so super huge and important. If we can actually even add a little twist to it, like when it comes to, like, say you and your husband, like you guys have your business together and one person feels like, okay, we need to go through a pivotal shift in our business, the way we do things. And the other person's like, no, I'm happy the way things are. Like, what suggestions do you have of how to make that happen?
Yeah, well, in terms of branding or rebranding, I think there's a couple different reasons why you approach that to begin with, and a lot of them ties into your topic as well of trying to get on the same page. And I think a lot of that has to do with is what you're doing working? Are you reaching the right audience you're trying to hit? Are the right people finding you? Are you making sales? Are all of your competitors getting your potential sales? Are you standing out? And so there's a lot of different reasons why someone, one would want to rebrand, but also that's kind of all the same reasons why branding is important in the first place, is that it delivers a consistent message to the world of who you are, what you do, and why it matters. And those are really the three biggest questions we ask in branding in general. And that they're the hard questions, right? It's hard to ask those questions and hard to answer those questions. And so, those are really the biggest things that really, how you answer them, or if certain things need to change, that kind of can help you get on the same page. Like if you do have another business partner or even a larger team as well, is what we're doing working? And, even looking at things like hard data to back that up, or running campaigns or whatever it might be, or people coming in the door, even if you had a brick and mortar store, so is what you're doing working? I think is a really great place to start in determining, do we need to make a change? Do we need to pivot?
Nice. And so how would you say you start off by even figuring out what a person, like what their brand should look like? Because as a graphic designer, you have someone that comes to you and they just kind of tell you the name of their company and what their company stands for. From a graphic designer standpoint, I would love to know what happens in you guys' mind to be so creative.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing and something that we really focus on is the strategy first. So for us, we start every project, no matter if it's a logo, a website, a full brand identity, no matter what it is, with the strategy session. And that's just so important, so that we have that chance to ask those big questions. And sometimes people are like, whoa, that's a really good question. I have not thought about that. And that's where we really come in and act as that happens quite a lot. And, even branding for ourselves in our own company, like sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to hire somebody for this, because it's a big process to ask yourself those questions. But that really is the place to start before any actual design work is done, is, looking at, who you are, what you do, and why it matters. And then once you've got solid answers to those questions, looking at things like, who is your audience? Who are your competitors? And doing all the research and gathering all the information in place, and making sure you have all that together before then moving forward into developing a brand. And there's really two main aspects to a brand. I kind of put them in two buckets, and people tend to just focus on the visual elements, which of course is extremely important. I'm a graphic designer. That's what I love to do. But on the flip side of that the part that really needs to come first is all of the non-visual elements. And so that's things like your mission statement, your vision statement, your unique selling proposition, basically your brand positioning. So all the non-visual elements, the less fun elements that I think people tend to think of, but that are really important to get in place and have a solid vision and plan for what you want your business to be. And then let those elements dictate what the design and what the visuals should look like. So letting that start there, and then that letting it dictate the rest. Yeah.
Wow, I like that, because that is so huge that so many people don't even think about that. Like, understanding that it's more than just a visual, but also the other part, like your mission statement, your purpose. And I work with a copywriter because I'm great with copy for other people, but for myself, kind of like what you said, like, hey, let's hire a graphic designer. Sometimes what we do for other people is not necessarily something that we enjoy doing for ourselves, because I get too much in my head, right? Because I'm too close to it. But one thing she does is always talks about having your branding voice. Like, where do you come from? Having that mission statement. What words do you use that really resonate and say who you are? Those also are saying certain things that actually, when people hear it, they know that's you. I like, one of the things that I always say all the time when somebody asks me, like when somebody does something I think is really dumb, I'll say, you need Jesus. And it's not coming from a spiritual place, but it's just like, you need some help. And so people know when they hear that, they automatically go, every time I hear that, I automatically think of you. So it's kind of like similar to the same thing. Like, what does people hear and what resonates with you, or what do they see visually that makes them think of you?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's all about perception, in the sense of what people, when they see your logo or they walk past your store or they go on your website, like, what message are they getting? And is it the right one? Is it actually representative of the products and services that you provide? Or is it, hey, our products are really high quality, they're great for, X, Y, and Z person. But if none of these other brand elements are communicating that, then nobody is going to know that in the first place. And I think you touched on one thing that we have found for ourselves as well, which is like, when is the point that you know that you need outside help? Like, you've reached your threshold of your own personal knowledge and you're like, okay, I like, for me, I am a total DIYer. I like to figure it out and learn things. And that's totally me, and my husband as well. But there is a point where it's like, okay, I need some additional help. And, we've experienced that in our own business. When last summer we hired a sales coach. So that's one way we said, okay, we need that outside help. And so I think that's another thing too, of knowing when it's the right time for you to rebrand, or is when you're ready to invest more time and energy into that portion of your business, just like we did into, hey, we need to get better at sales.
Yeah. And speaking of rebranding, what are some times when you feel like it is important? I know you touched on it a little bit, but why is rebranding important? And what are times that it's definitely required that they are imperative that they rebrand themselves?
Yeah, there's a couple of different main reasons. I think the first one that tends to be the most common is that you've outgrown your current brand. What you initially had was fine, it was working, but now it's the time that has come that, hey, what we're doing just isn't resonating anymore. Or the fact that maybe you have changed as a company. And, one really great example of this is a large rebrand we did for a client. They're a promotional products company, really unique and creative services too, but they were around for 10 years. So, a good chunk of time. They're doing something right to be around for that long of a time. But at the same time, after this 10-year period, they're like, no, we're just not really happy with how we're presenting ourselves. It doesn't fit us anymore. We are trying to really grow and become a much bigger company, and just what message we're sharing and what our visuals look like, like our logo, like all of this stuff is just not who we are anymore. It's not reflective of where we're trying to go. So that would be like the perfect opportunity where it's like, okay, well, let's take a hard look at this and figure out what we need to do. And so for them, we redid basically everything. We redid all of the non-visual elements of their brand. So again, that mission and vision, brand voice, like you touched on, we did everything. But then we also redid their logo and we redid their website as well. So so that's kind of one great example, and probably the most common example of when you'd be ready and the kind of a rebrand would be the right fit. But there's another reason, which is that maybe your branding never really represented your business well in the first place. You just were starting, maybe you're a startup or a super small business, you're just going, you need to get that website up, you need to get a logo up, just so you can start presenting yourself to the world. But okay, I've been in business for a few years and now I'm ready, and that's the point where I want to go back and like do it the right way the first time, and more strategic rather than just getting something up to get it up. So those are kind of the two main reasons I would say a rebrand would be right for you, is that, yep, if you've outgrown your current brand, or you need to kind of go back and start over a little bit.
And how do you find that rebranding is helpful for a business?
Yeah, so there is a lot of reasons why a rebrand can actually help you in your business. One of the biggest ones is actually targeting the right audience. So often people come to us and we'll say, okay, who is your target audience? And people aren't sure, or they don't know, or they're like, well, I really need to put some thought into that. And so that's one of the things that we help our clients with. But through that rebrand process, we can make sure that, the non-visual and the visual elements are all tied together and are talking to who you actually are trying to talk to, which ultimately, can drive sales and increase your income. Another reason or another, outcome of this is representing your business accurately and effectively. So again, like I was touching on before, it's just making sure that your quality of whatever you do is represented through the way you're presenting yourself. And another reason too is to stand out. Maybe, one thing we do is we'll pull up, like, okay, here's your top, 10 competitors in your area. Let's pull up all of their logos. Let's say if we're focusing on the logo during this time, here's your logo, here's all their logos. What do we notice? Hey, almost all of them are orange, or all of them are blue. And, that's not going to help you stand out, right, from your competition. So there's different things like that can really help you be realigned with who you are as a business and who you're trying to be, as well as ultimately, the goal of being increasing your sales and increasing your revenue. And I would say one more thing, which is that really rebranding can also really increase your confidence and helping you receive that recognition as a business. And a really great example of this would be a client who was a large format printing company, again, had been around for, I think, almost 20 years. So quite a while. But they weren't marketing their business anymore, really at all, because they were just so unhappy with the way their website looked, their logo, didn't really have a brand in the first place. And so they just weren't feeling very proud and confident to go forward and promote themselves. And through rebranding, they did get that confidence. And now they've launched a bunch of marketing campaigns and are increasing their sales. So there's a lot of different reasons that can really be beneficial.
Yeah, and what about those companies that, when do you feel rebranding hurts a company? Have you experienced that?
I think the only thing I would say is that if you're not ready or unable to invest the time and money into doing it the right way, I think it's just kind of goes back to, just trying to get something up to get something up, or might be like a Band-Aid solution, like, oh, this is better. So, okay. But, if you're not going to do the strategy portion of it first, I would say don't go there. You're not ready for that next step yet. So yeah, I think the only way I would recommend not to do it is if you're just looking for a really quick fix, a Band-Aid solution, and just aren't quite ready to put on that time that you really need to have a strategy behind what you're doing.
Yeah, and that's super huge and important, because so many times, people do, like, they want to put up something very quickly, and just to get something out there, and they feel like, I need a logo before they can do anything else. They're like, I need a logo, I need this, and they're not clear of who they serve, why they serve with, the people they do. And because my audience and the those that I work with are entrepreneurs who've experienced success in their life, and they want to continue to feel that momentum, oftentimes they may end up just hurrying up and doing things in order just to continue to feel successful. It's like, I got my logo, I got my business cards, I'm good, I'm ready to go. But sometimes it can do a person a disservice. Do you feel that, well, let me ask you this. What's your take on web pages and having a web up before, when you're first starting out? Because I've heard mixed things. I've heard some people feel like you don't need a website in order to get started, and you shouldn't have a website at all. And then there's some people like, well, at least have something, some landing page or something, so that you can send people to. What's your take on that as a designer?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that as well from other people. Wow, I didn't have a website for 5 years and I was just fine. It's like, well, that's great. I'm glad. But for us and for what we recommend to all of our clients is definitely at least having some sort of a web presence. We consider that to be really, really important. And just, not having one, I think just makes you seem like you're not really with what's going on. Like one of my first things I do when I get someone's business card is I go to their website, or if I meet someone, or I drive by, a business or an office or something like that. I look up their website. So if I can't find you online, I'm going to think that's strange, and and I think it's a kind of a trust thing and a credibility building thing, is to have that online presence. And for us, like, we don't believe in websites that just have a lot of fluff, aren't, they're just information holders. And that's not really what your website should be at all. Your website should be you online, your business represented online. And really, I think that your website should be your most strategic selling tool. That is the thing for anyone to come and find you, is through your website. And you just have such a wider audience and so many more ways of reaching people than you would with not having one. So we consider it super important, and a strategic and really important part of your overall brand is your website.
Yeah, and I absolutely 100% agree with you on that, because I know for me, as I was doing my business, people said, "Oh, you don't need a website, you don't need this," and me kind of being a rebellious, right? When I feel very strongly about it, I'm like, nope, I'm gonna have me a website. Well, I realized the people that I work with and are highly successful entrepreneurs are going to look at your website, and everything that I've done, whether, it's my podcast, my summit, just even in my business, the first thing they do is they go to my website and they're like, oh, okay, I see that you're serious. You're not just throwing something out there. And it does, to me, make a big, huge difference. And so having some type of online presence is super huge and important. So what would you recommend for those entrepreneurs who are in the process, especially with everything happening right now? They're like, I don't have the money to invest in a high paying website. What would you recommend is the least thing that they do with rebranding, having an online presence, like to get away with being able to start making money, having some success, or those that are already making money and they want to continue that success with everything happening? What would you recommend are some of the foundational things they need to have?
Yeah, and I think you touched on those two different audiences, right? Of people who are just trying to do this now and build something, and then people who are doing it and are successful, and like, what can we do more? How can we use this time to become more successful in the long run? And I think to the first audience who are just trying to start now, I mean, I think this is a kind of a great time to do it, just because we've all got a little extra time on our hands in some way or another. And yeah, I think just the best thing you can do is just start. While I do think a logo is an important piece, honestly, I think that having your mission and vision, and what actually answering those three questions, right? Who are you? What do you do? And why it matters? I would say for everyone, start there before you do anything else, and make sure that you can find concrete answers to those three questions. I would say start there no matter what, before you start building your website, you get a logo, whatever, start there. And then from there, I think, honestly, if you're just starting and don't have a lot of money to spend, I can absolutely understand that. I think getting up some sort of an online presence, whether it's a Facebook page or preferably some sort of a website where you can start building content and building that online presence, is really important. There's website builders like a Squarespace or a Wix that are relatively easy to get the hang of. But there's also even websites that you can get for free through Google. I say, if you're just starting, I think that's a great place to start. And it's better to start just doing something and building something than not. So I would say that for sure. And then for the other audience that's kind of trying to use this time to become more successful in the long run, I think it's still a good idea to go back and revisit those questions and say, is what we're doing actually working? Let's look at our competitors. What are they doing? Or am I standing out? So kind of looking at things from that point of view. And then once you've gotten some of those answers to those questions, kind of moving forward and saying, okay, do we need to refresh our website? Is it, are people finding us online to begin with? Or one really successful thing you can do too is heat mapping of your website, and you can actually see how people are interacting with your site. What they're clicking on or what they're not clicking on is just equally as important. And basically using data to make decisions about what you should go forth and do in your business, or even getting feedback from people. Hey, what do you think of my logo? Or you looked at my logo, I didn't tell you anything about what I do. What do you think I do? And see if it's actually resonating and talking to the right people or not. So kind of just doing your research and asking those big questions and formulating a plan and letting all of those answers and information really dictate what you should do next.
Yeah, those are really good points. I really like that because it's so true that oftentimes people go by what they do or who they want to work with, but it's not necessarily what people are looking for. For instance, if a person says, like I was on a call earlier today and someone says, I work with helping people become more confident on camera, but it's like, is that really what people are searching for? Are they looking at, how to be more visible, how to stand out? Like, what do they actually do? Those are the things that you want to look at when you're deciding on what you're picking. And some of these are people who are doing very well in their area, but they want to take it to the next level and they wonder what's stopping them. So those questions that you ask are super huge. Yeah, I really appreciate that because oftentimes we stop ourselves based on not really knowing who do we serve, why are we doing what we do, kind of thing. So I really appreciate that. Is there any other tips or strategies or tools or something that you feel like our audience should know?
I think I think the biggest thing I know I keep harping on is definitely those big questions of who you are, what you do, and why it matters. I think those are some of the biggest things. But then, yeah, I think more than that, it's just kind of going out there and asking other people questions too of, is this represent, what I do and who I am? And like just asking people what they think, I think is a really valuable thing. I mean, I think too often we ask ourselves that and then we go, oh, I don't know, and I think it's like you don't have to know from yourself, and I think it's almost better to get other people's perspectives. And it just goes back to what we were talking about earlier, right, of getting that outside help, whether it's with sales like we did, or hey, I need to hire a website designer or a brand strategist or whatever it might be, to kind of get that other outside help, because you can just get such a better, different perspective. It's really hard to kind of go from looking from, the outside in, so I think those are some of the biggest things, and something that anybody can do starting right now is just, focusing on the strategy behind things and then letting that dictate, how you do things like your visual things like your logo or your website.
I appreciate that. That's great information. So how can people find you? Where is your online presence? What do where they want to say follow you or get some strategies or talk to you some more? How can they look you up?
For sure. You can find us at mothershed.design.com, as well as on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Actually, if you sign up for our newsletter, we are offering a free website audit. So you give us your email, give us your website URL. We will take a look at your homepage of your website and do a little Loom video and actually give you feedback and recommendations on what to change, so that then you can start going from there. So yeah.
Oh, that is really a great strategy to do. And for those that don't take advantage of it, I recommend that you do, because of the fact that honestly, when you're starting out, and if you're one of those people who are building your website by yourself, you definitely want some experienced people to help you say, okay, here's some things to look at, and looking at it from a different eye and a different perspective. And even if you've had like a friend, because some people, like when there's, I'm going to have my friend look at it. No, you want some people who are, professional in their field, subject matter experts, to definitely help you with that. Well, thank you so much, Meg, for all the things that you've shared today. I think that it's great to help people understand why rebranding is super huge and important, and ways that they can do that with those questions. But even more so, giving our audience, those that are thinking about starting a business with their spouse or their significant other, what are some of the important things for them to do? Because oftentimes a lot of people don't talk about that space. And so it's good to have those pros and cons. So before you even think about it, make sure that you understand what you're getting into, and don't just say, well, I think we should start a business. Have that conversation and really understand, if your communication is not already great before you start a business, it's not going to be great afterwards. And then when it comes to, branding or rebranding, if you're already not able to communicate, it's going to be very hard to agree on what direction you should take. So most definitely. Well, thank you so much for being here with me, Meg. And thank you all for listening, and as well as viewing another episode of Decide to Move. I'm super excited to be with you today, and look forward to you joining me for the next episode. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Decide to Move podcast with Monica M. Bijou. If you are ready to make a pivotal shift and take your destined position in the world, then schedule a free discovery call by going to www.decidetomove.com. For all links mentioned in today's show and to listen to previous episodes, go to www.decidetomuvepodcast.com. And remember, we've all been delivered rotten fruit in our past. We can choose to chew on the rotten fruit trying to convince ourselves it's what we want, or we can become the fruits of our labor and create an incredible, fulfilling, and inspiring life and business out of it. You have what it takes to create the life you want.